So product in involvement in growth of these companies, the involvement happens much earlier in the life cycle. Marketing automation is always like an afterthought, right? You're trying to bridge a gap in your product which should have not been there. The acceleration with which tools like us get adopted is going to massively improve. When you ask their teams as to what they do for attention marketing, all they will tell you is they send push notifications.
User engagement and retention is a crucial but least understood aspect of a growing a successful business. We are here to change that. Hi, this is Ankur. Join me as I dive into conversation with the best and brightest minds in user engagement to help you navigate the why, what, and how of this subject. This is our first episode of the State of Retention Marketing podcast. And we'd just love to introduce our first speaker, who happens to be Avlesh, the CEO of WebEngage. From starting a SaaS business in 2011, when SaaS was kind of unheard in India, to now having a platform which is scaled up to serve global customers, the journey has come a long way. They pivoted to a full-stack user engagement and retention platform in 2016, if I'm right.
That's right.
15, 16.
That's right.
And they've been in the ring through the entire digital revolution that's panned out across India. So, nobody better to have an inside-the-ring view of how the retention and the digital marketing ecosystem has evolved. And he's seen customer love from fast-growing startups and also sold the solution to large enterprises as well as unicorns. Now, we would love to understand how the journey of the maturity of the ecosystem has evolved in his view, how customers, their questions, their needs, their problems have evolved over the last few years. And that's what we're here about. So as a simple first question, you've seen this journey over the last several years. What's your assessment of the current state of maturity of the retention ecosystem?
In India?
Yeah, in India. Let's zoom into this.
Sure. No, Ankur, it's much better than what it used to be when we launched the product 6 years ago. And of course, our own thought process or own evolution was happening. All right. So the assessment was also pretty different from how we do it now. But yes, it's much better than what it used to be. There's still, huge room to do more. Marketing tech is very widely misunderstood as a space in general. Seeing it as a space which is a culmination of data, 360 view of users, touch points across mobile, web, CRM, offline ecosystems, and then seeing automation truly as automation, right? I think we're still a long way to go. People don't necessarily do marketing automation when they actually roll out marketing automation, right? And I'll talk about it in due course.
Sure, as we go along. What I would love for you to do is break down this whole journey of evolution into, let's say, a few intermittent steps that you've seen people take as to how do they evolve from, day zero to a relatively mature kind of stack.
Sure.
If you could break that journey down.
Sure. Yeah, no, very happy to, because as you said, we've been very privileged to have had a ringside view to some of these companies doing this and also learning and growing. So almost invariably, Ankur, everybody starts their journey on MarTech by feeling a latent need to do some form of first-party marketing, right? So so you will hear customers say or CMOs say, our email marketing is not up to mark, right? We need to do better.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody will say, we haven't done enough on WhatsApp. India being WhatsApp first always, we should have done better things on WhatsApp, and we want to do better WhatsApp marketing. You'll hear a lot of these, right, in conversations, even till date. And invariably, that's how almost everybody starts their marketing automation or
Communicating channels, essentially.
Thinking very channel-centric, communication-centric. And then they sort of start from there saying, I need an email marketing automation now within my org, and we need to do it better. We need to graduate from the likes of, let's say, a MailChimp or whatever other things that we were doing in the past. And now this needs to, sort of reach to a larger audience with more sort of use cases deployed in it. Mm-hmm. They start with this, set up a marketing ops team, which largely is focused on building, if I had to put it that way, marketing newsletters, right? Which is long form content, bunch of products thrown in, a lot of marketing promotions thrown in, and goes out to users at a certain frequency.
This is still bulk blast.
This is still bulk. The more evolved ones will graduate towards segmented email marketing, or replace the channel with any other channel if you like. And that's how almost everybody starts. Push notifications, right? We hear about push notifications so much in the marketing tech context in India, Southeast Asia. This is only a SEA phenomenon or emerging market phenomenon. It does not exist in the developed markets. There's no push notification marketing, right? As a channel, like the way it is in India. You'll come across companies which send tens of millions of push notifications in a day, and these are just bulk notifications, right?
So saying that as the ecosystem, we're still not really far beyond the bulk play. Is that what I
That's
say?
correct.
That's what a large number of people are doing.
That's what a large chunk of companies start doing, and they stay in that zone for a very long period of time because of this misplaced notion that these campaigns, as they're called, they bring you some revenue, and they do.
Of course, yeah.
You'll always have your data room set for these campaigns, which will tell you so many delivered and so many people actually viewed and clicked and then converted, right?
Sure.
So there is a funnel that you see, and once you get used to seeing that data, it's very hard to think beyond that.
This is that a little ironic, given that you will have all that sophistication involved in Google Ads and Facebook Ads ecosystem where the targeting gets more complex. And on the other side, you might have all this data about your first-party audience as well, but you're not using it well. And why is that not counterintuitive?
Right. No, that's a great question, Ankur, that you ask. And this is where the challenges in this space start, right? So when you try to do this comparison, right, AdTech versus MarTech, AdTech appears a lot more sophisticated because of all this fancy kind of targeting that it offers. MarTech, on the other hand, is limited to first-party data. Unlike a Google, right? It's not building a data set for you.
But guys, you run a CDP, right? So first-party data is also fairly rich. Come to think of it.
It is.
So is this more of a intent/education/ I don't know.
So
what
that
do you
is
define that barrier as?
Absolutely right. So bang on, and you probably answered your question yourself. This is where marketing automation becomes complex for companies to adopt, right? Because now you're talking about implementing a first-party data layer, and then you're talking about using this to build more sensible and more targeted engagement using the automation stack. Very few people have worked across both these spectrums and seen the culmination.
I'm going to get to that as to when you say these few people. I'm sure some of these have been your customers. They've been around for a long enough time. And I'd love to hear some of those stories on what they've done. But meanwhile, in your sense, it's the key barrier ends up being what? Is it, because it's a relatively recent subject. So is it the maturity of the talent, the supply of talent, the decision makers' own understanding of what they can do with this? Where is it getting held up?
Sure. No, it's a mix of all of this, Ankur, to be honest. Unfortunately, the onus of data and data completeness around users and being able to stitch it all together across multiple touch points, that onus lies with somebody else. The onus of doing campaigns and bringing in more revenue via automation campaigns sits with somebody else.
So it's the first guy is the product guy, I'm assuming, or the tech team.
He's usually product, data, tech, right? It will be, depending on company and size.
Campaign is a marketer.
Is usually the CMO, right? Or the team. Now, these two, it's very difficult for them to converge unless there is somebody sitting on top of these two driving this, right? And invariably in companies that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen very often. And that leads to sort of this another layer of data buildup, right? Siloed data buildup, where marketers are left to decide what data is that they need for engagement that they want to do.
Sure.
And as you can imagine, it's a very tough ask, because now you're talking about, if you had to talk very sophisticated level automation, you're now putting the onus on marketing to be able to design a schema that will lead them to certain kind of automation, in times to come.
A typical marketer has never made a schema in his life.
Never, right? Very hard ask, very tough ask, right? And that is where it starts to sort of become mediocre in that sense, right? The quality of engagement, the quality of data, etc. and then it's an uphill battle, right? Because now getting all of this done, mind you, right? All of this, Ankur, takes time.
Sure.
Right. In a more evolved business where you have multiple touch points, you have apps, you have your mobile website, your desktop website, you have CRMs. Integrating in all these places, making sure that the data comes in itself is a very tough task. Now, if you've zeroed in on certain kind of schema, which if left to the marketer would always be bare bones, even if the marketer graduates, let's say a year down the line, and the thinking evolves, the understanding evolves, that job of getting this additional intelligence,
more data, and he'll have to go back to the data team for it, and that's the journey.
It's like a rework. It's like a rework. The whole
so what I find interesting is some of our other conversations where we speak to people like GrowthX, they've now been championing this whole aspect of a growth team, which is a combination of marketers plus techies plus product folks and a bunch of experimentation happening in between. Do you, what's in your opinion a great org design to run retention as a practice, right? Because if you're saying that the marketer doesn't know this, the product guy doesn't know this, maybe they need to come together, because to find the same guy to do both might still be hard. And so what's the org like?
If there were more people with that skill, I think would have all done a great service to the country and to the whole region, right? No, because it's a very rare skill, Ankur. It's a very rare skill to combine these two. Marketers also, it's not just about campaigns and automation. There's so much more about marketing about creativity.
Sure.
You need to think about campaigns in a certain way for them to be effective, right? So that is a certain kind of...
Are we saying that this is like a, inborn kind of play, or do you think there's a journey to maturing / teaching / educating where people will go through this?
I think it's a lot about education.
Yeah.
Wherein you get to, you're aligned towards learning what you're not, originally supposed to do, right? Marketers are not supposed to understand how data works, right? Or how
that was then, right? That's not the truth.
That's not the truth anymore. But again, that skill gap.
The same marketers we're talking about who are spending millions of dollars on the Googles and the Facebook and understanding the funnels. So they understand the funnel side of things, but the data schema is where
there is a huge difference, Ankur, in making a Google ad work versus a marketing tech work.
Absolutely.
Because within a marketing tech, you're also responsible for understanding how it works.
Absolutely.
With Google, you can completely skip that.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to, right? So that how it works is a very challenging part for people who don't come from that world.
So would you have like a, to-do list for leaders to accelerate this learning curve?
We work with all these customers, right, all the time. And invariably, if you've seen our onboarding process, there is so much pushback, right? That we do, and during the onboarding phase where the customer quickly wants to get started, but we keep pushing them to actually get the schema finalized even before they get started, right? And sometimes it's also it gets very tricky because you don't have a customer which is evolved to a certain extent to even appreciate what you're trying to do, right?
Okay.
Because for them, what they have is side campaigns in mind that they want to go live yesterday. Right?
Sure.
And they don't have any appreciation for what you're trying to do, which will help them in the future, right? This gets fast-tracked with education, and while we try to do whatever we can as a company, but it's a difficult thing, to get this done in a short span of time. In my view, I think organizationally, when companies decide that they want to go down this path, there are 2-3 things that they need to set out in their charter. One is they clearly need to internalize the fact within leadership and the mid management teams is that this is a revenue channel. Everybody needs to take it seriously because you're going to make money from this. It's not common wisdom, Ankur. Funnily, it's not common wisdom that 25-30% of your revenues in a steady state can actually just come from this stack if done right. But most people are very...
This is where what I hear you say is some sort of an intent level question mark / willingness to prioritize this. And if I remember correctly, Rajan's on your board and he's been super vocal about the whole subject of retention.
That's right.
And I would have imagined the number of times he's repeated this across the forums, he said that it should have by now become a bit of a priority. And now that we are in the so-called funding winter, yeah, of course, if everybody listened to Rajan, the world would be a different place. But regardless, now that we're in the funding winter, do you see that intent / willingness to invest in this dimension getting better across organizations?
It has gotten better, surely. Not necessarily triggered just by this.
Sure.
But, as a country, we keep talking about, 1.3 billion population, 500, 600 million users, some mobile data sources, right, which will tell you that's the number of mobile internet users that we have in the country now. The reality, Ankur, is and the founders at Zerodha and others have talked about this very vehemently. Um, there is very small number of users who actually have the ability to transact meaningfully
Sure.
online, right? Depending on who you talk to, that number ranges from 20 million to 50 to 60 million. Right? That's all there is.
Ultimately, seeing the size of the market is limited, so unless you have repeats, it's not going to
Now,
scale.
after you've acquired all of them, which you will if you've stayed around, most of the companies in the country, they've been around for almost a decade. Now there is nobody else meaningful to acquire. You can keep acquiring the long tail, right? And if you're building a business,
Those guys do one transaction a year, so what are you going to do?
those will be, it's a very different business, and I'm sure there is a different model for those. But I'm talking about all these commerce-led businesses, decent basket size, 1,000 rupee in India, sort of products. There are not as many buyers, and by now you probably have acquired all of them.
Besides, also there's all of this competition, which will anyway increase your cost of acquisition.
All the time,
Google is Google.
All the time, and it's a pity that you actually, as a CMO, decide that to get these users back, you go back to Google, you go back to Facebook, your so-called retargeting campaigns, and try to get these users back. There's no reason. There's absolutely no reason for you to. These are your customers. You've already acquired them. High-value customers. If they have transacted with you once, you probably know everything about them to be able to make an outreach and make a very solid targeted outreach, right? Meaningful outreach. And do this in a manner where you could convert even 15 to 20% of them. You're moving the needle, right?
So, I mean, the way you describe MarTech, there's a lot of possibility and impact. 25 to 30% revenue is serious business to be having any CMO's attention. I would imagine all this sounds too good sort of theoretically, but translating that into action and outcomes might be overwhelming.
It is.
So is there a, let's say, thought process on how do you go about from day 0 to day 1 to day 2?
Yeah.
What do you put in place first and next and then next?
Ankur, it starts with building the right org structure and the team. Because this, right, if done right, is actually, depending on the size of the company, it's a 2 to 20 people job. We have customers, right, in a wide range. They have these many product managers and marketers sitting on WebEngage day in, day out, trying to optimize, some of their funnels, some of their, some of their cohorts, and then running campaigns accordingly, running journeys accordingly, monitoring, and then, changing. All of this is very heavy scale deployment, and it's also a lot of intense work. And there are different kinds of people, right? There will be people who will be just designing campaigns. There will be people thinking about the next orchestration that you want to build, right? Which essentially is the next automation flow that you want to bring to WebEngage, because otherwise it's very complex to sort of, stitch things together. All of this is different kinds of skills.
Sure.
So, as you go along...
The impact scaring me even further from when I started out, because it's overwhelming to begin with.
No.
If I'm saying that I need these 20,000 skills and 20 people, how do I make it?
You don't do this on day one. I don't think there's a point of doing this on day one, in the very first place, because, it does take you a fair bit of time to integrate really well, to make sure that your data, comes in the manner that you want it.
Somebody's going to design that as a first step, but it has to. Your onboarding team will probably help us there.
Again, it's not a one-time job.
Sure.
It's, you keep gradually you make incremental changes. You keep getting better. You add more touch points. You add more data points.
Yeah.
And sort of cover the entire spectrum. Again, gradual process. But as you do this, right, and you keep doing this right, the skill set within your team also keeps evolving. The team that started at this level, right, 6 months down the line, if they've continued to do well and they have squeezed what they were supposed to out of the platform, they've grown to the next level of maturity. And there are many cases, right? Case in point is Penny, one of our customers. Amazing work, right? How they started.
What did they do right and what they probably could have done better? What did somebody whose journey has been with you, let's say for 5 years, I know MyGlam has been around for a longer time.
Absolutely.
What did these guys do right in the beginning itself, which helped them to scale up? And, if you have examples of mistakes that have been made by these guys or some other named guys, I would love to hear some of those.
No, great question. Great question, because the answer is very close to my heart. I advise all companies to do this. In all these examples, right? Go Ibibo, Make My Trip, you have MyGlam, you said, First Cry. Right? In all these examples, Ankur, product and tech are the key owners of the entire platform.
So basically saying marketers are not the best guys to be running this to begin with.
The best ROI that I've seen people draw from this have always been when the product and tech have been completely involved.
And they have a bit of, let's say, influence as well as ownership of this whole play.
Both. Influence, of course, because ultimately it boils down to, how quickly can you deploy, how quickly can you sort of integrate new use cases, etc. But when they truly understand, right, the agility of the platform, right,
Sure.
and with agility with which it can deploy automation use cases and deliver comms at scale without you having to worry about building your own infrastructure.
Sure.
They unlock a lot. They pretty much unleash a whole lot of things, right?
Is it safe to say that from an org design perspective, let the subject of user engagement and retention be owned more by product than by marketing? And marketing can play its role in terms of copy, creative, and all of that. But the architecting of the system as well as infrastructure as well as the automation should be done by somebody from a product mindset.
For all new age companies, Ankur, I think that should be the playbook.
Yeah.
All new age companies, fancy term, startups, right? Anybody who's building consumer tech, D2C, I think it's a very fair thing to have product and tech own this up, see this through, let marketing graduate with them in terms of use cases, and eventually when marketing builds its own skill, has the right set of folks, and you have this the growth X kind of folks you were mentioning, right? Once they have this, then they can offload it to them. But yes, as I said, in my view, I've seen the best use cases. Wherever I've seen them, it's always been invariably the product or the tech as the key owner.
Key stakeholders.
Yeah.
So would it be fair to say that, typical mistake companies are making as of today, and they've been making this for the past few years, is to put this on the job of somebody who's relatively junior, maybe a recent graduate, first time to marketing, and now he's a campaign manager who basically uses bulk dispatches.
That's right.
And that's a classic mistake.
That's a classic mistake everybody makes. Even today, I see some very heavy, mobile internet companies in India, right? Their quality of retention. When you ask their teams as to what they do for retention marketing, all they will tell you is they send push notifications. That's it.
But that's what's also now gotten the reputation of being spammy. And
it will, right? Because everybody is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's the same set of users you're reaching out to. Everybody struggles to get the mind share. The ROI on these things is very limited, Ankur. Beyond a point.
You say ROI as a word, and in fact, funnily, that's my exact next question, because as a marketer, and I'm a marketer as well, there is this reasonable amount of money that gets spent across different parts of the puzzle on Google, on Facebook, or acquisition on several pieces of the MarTech stack. The tools exactly don't end up being a large part of the bill in most scenarios.
Sure.
But people still tend to attach the ROI question mark to it.
Yeah.
And is that a fair way to look at this? How should a marketer or a leader really think about ROI when it comes to MarTech? Specifically focusing on this whole retention stack perspective.
I'll tell you why that's the notion, and why people think of this as a cost heavy business, is because marketing tech tools, they go hand in hand with some of these channels that you use, which are necessarily paid channels. Channels like email, SMS, WhatsApp, etc. Every message that you send, there's a cost attached to it.
Sure.
All new age MarTech tools like us will let you send push notifications for free, right? So whether it's a mobile app or it's your browser push, all of this doesn't cost you anything. You just send as many.
There's no variable cost.
Sure, right? But there is a cost to sending emails and SMS through these platforms. When a CEO thinks about cost, in his or her mind, it's all one.
Sure.
And if you're very heavy email SMS sender, that cost adds up too. Right?
Would it still be anyway comparable to your Google Ads click costs?
SMS is expensive.
Yeah.
SMS is very expensive, right? And, whether it's people in financial services, fintech, etc., tech also uses heavily SMS. Some of these guys are very heavy SMS senders.
But so are we saying that the sophistication of these SMSs, if done right, could still deliver ROI compared to a black?
Talk to streaming guys, they make money on SMS. Crazy amount of money on SMS.
I would get to that in terms of the best guys doing the best jobs out of this. I hear you talk about gaming. But, from a leader perspective, how do I look at ROI? Because, if I were to think of ROAS as a metric, which is return on ad spend that typically marketers would use, my Google ads and my Facebook ads and stuff will probably go to 3 to 4x. If I look at the whole funnel of the kind of stuff you talk about, even if it's SMS, and attribution can still sometimes be messy, but you're generally talking north of 10 to 15x in which way.
Sure.
So then, is it something you encounter as a real problem, that why are you measuring my cost as much, because I'm delivering you a much better ROAS as a marketer?
Yeah.
And how do you encounter that? How do you counter that question?
Yeah, no, it's a chicken egg problem. most people haven't seen this cycle of generating revenue from a MarTech platform. MarTech platforms, right? If you still go to legacy enterprise businesses, they're still seen as an operational tool in the marketing.
In fact, I heard somebody compare this to AWS costs. This is necessary, has to be done, but it's a cost.
Ridiculous, right? But yeah, in absence of the tool not being classified under revenue generating category, it's bound to happen.
But is that true of the entire category of platforms? Is there somebody who's able to cross over to that side where customers now see this as a category?
There are service companies, right? So we've come across a few in our journey too, which are perceived very differently.
Sure.
Right. So their core job, they're also MarTech companies in that sense, but they do provide services. These are services in the form of data intelligence, telling you, churning your own data and telling you, what customer segments are going to be better to target, which customer segments are most likely to convert, make you more money from a repeat standpoint, loyalty standpoint, etc. Right? And customers put a lot of premium on that because for them that data analysis, it's worth paying for. And those businesses, the ROAS on them is evaluated very differently, as compared to what we have perceived generally is software tools, right? So unless I think the onus is on us, it's the customers are not to blame. I think this is a job at our hand where we have to position ourselves, we have to come across as a revenue generating tool. When you are able to put it in that perspective, Ankur, these tools, if done right, you get to 10x ROI within a 6 months time span.
Oh, absolutely.
If not sooner. Right? That's how simple and effective it is. But again, doing it right, that's the hardest part.
So which I'm assuming, given that Google Ads have been around for 10, 15 odd years and retention is a subject, you guys started out 6 years ago, but that was still super early times.
That's right.
The way the funding ecosystem is played out in India, anyways, there's not been as much emphasis on retention-led growth. It's mostly been acquisition-led growth. So the talent supply, the mindset has all not been in place.
Right.
But I'm hoping that changes now.
Yep,
and that brings me to the gaming guys, because those guys have always operated very profitably, very sensibly, and very interestingly. And kind of regulatory gray area because some states have a line there. But I would love to dig deeper into some of these use cases that you've seen being applied by these guys, which has delivered excellent results. And what ultimately has to make a case for a CMO to take this stuff more seriously, because somewhere or the other, when the intent has to start at the top, and from there it percolates to the kind of people you bring in, the kind of ownership you assign to product. And if you're able to have that board level conversation and saying that this has to be owned by product versus marketing, within marketing is just some guys sitting in a corner pushing out campaigns, right? That's what's happening. But what would happen differently if product were to run it?
I'll tell you why product becomes a key stakeholder in these kind of companies. Most of these gaming apps, for the same reason, right? They cannot be listed on the Google's Play Store, regulatory reasons, etc. Right? The actual discovery and download also has to be facilitated.
Sure.
People are not discovering you on the Play Store. There's no way to do so. So you have to get them to your website, get them to read stuff and download a dangerous looking APK, which will throw 5 different warnings on your phone before you install it, right?
Sure.
Just getting it done itself is hard.
Sure.
Yeah, as you can imagine, right? So product in involvement in growth of these companies, the involvement happens much, much earlier in the life cycle.
Okay.
The thinking to how to get this product installed is built into...
It's not just a marketing problem.
It's not a marketing problem. It comes. Marketing problems are much, much later.
Sure.
Right? It becomes a part of your growth story, right? Your actual distribution story. Number one. Number two, because these are games, you're talking about gamification mindset from day one.
Sure.
Right? So you're essentially building your app and experiences within the app, which are all gamified in true sense, right? These people, the product people in these companies, all the way to their developers, they understand the benefits of being able to gamify anything. Now, all of these gamification, the last mile happens via messaging.
Sure.
All gamification is messaging.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be a nudge involved.
There will be at some place. They're not more cozied up and warmed up to the idea than their counterparts elsewhere, right?
Sure.
These things, they help natural adoption cycle, and they understand utility of marketing tech platforms from day one. Right. Because as I said, right, from product all the way to the design.
That'll boil down to the org design where the ownership resides with product. You see the same stuff happening with more fintechs, more edtechs. That's also like
it's getting better. It is getting better. But again, marketing automation is always like an afterthought, right? You're trying to bridge a gap in your product, which should have not been there. The gap should have been fixed in some way so that the leak was minimal. Now,
saying funnel leakage or repeat.
across different funnels.
Various funnels.
Now, if you experience a Netflix or an Expedia, you see how carefully thought through experiences are.
Sure.
Right. Once you visit a website or the app, or you go back, these are very thoughtfully crafted journeys.
There's a lot of science to it, which is a evolution of the ecosystem.
And people keep saying, there's a lot of AI, ML. Sure, there may be, but that's not important. That's the underlying tech.
Yeah.
It could be anything. The point is, these journeys are very carefully thought. Somebody's thinking, these are 5 possible ways a people leave me.
And there's a mature guy thinking, is that?
There's a much mature guy. Yeah, he's a much more mature guy thinking and orchestrating these flows in the head. All of it can't go into the product on day one, never will, but you're thinking with these user stories in mind.
To begin with, anyway, given that product and tech bandwidth are usually, hard to get, it just makes sense for the marketer or maybe the guy who's, let's call him the growth product manager here, to be the driver's seat on running this kind of shows outside of product windows, right? That would just make sense.
Yep.
Interesting. So product guys, wherever they get involved, they do a much better job at
because they're able to create.
It's the thought process. It's not something against marketers as much as it's something about the skill sets that's
just the skill sets. Yeah, just the skill sets.
Interesting. Generally from a prioritization perspective, given that we spoke about the winter and we spoke about retention as an important aspect of success, and we talk about marketing automation, adding up to the aspect of impact of retention, 20 to 30% revenue, great ROAS.
Yep.
So from a linkage, from an ecosystem perspective, are people able to see that relationship clearly that now marketing automation is great for my retention, is great for my business? Or is that still a dots not fully connected?
No, I think I need retention in my business, and my retention needs to be great, fairly well acknowledged. I think most people understand the utility and importance of why they need to do this. The challenge is the idea of retention is a complex one, right?
Sure.
It starts with what is retention for you? People will use this term very loosely, right? For some, it may mean repeat orders. For some, it may mean D30 cohorts. For some, it may mean how many loyalty reward subscribers are there.
Sure.
And so on and so forth, right? Everybody has a very different metric. Most people don't know what they really want when they mean the term retention.
Okay.
They probably want all of this. And because it's all over the place, the measurability of this is where it starts. One of the things that I keep saying even within the team is you can't improve what you can't measure. It's as simple as that. If you say, I want to improve retention, tell me how you measure it today.
Oh, well, I've heard a lot of people talk about 60% of our business comes from repeat orders, so we have great retention. Are you
exactly right?
For real? But yeah, that's the reality of the audience.
That's the reality.
Sure. So that's a journey of evolution, I would imagine. But with all this attention now coming from people at Sequoia, and that's an investment house which puts money in the companies, do you see that becoming more and more common? Because I'm hoping and assuming that these companies do a better job, which means the people working with these companies know slightly better than, there's a degree of top-down play happening. Sure. So from a journey of evolution perspective, we see that moving in that direction.
I see. Okay. These are incredibly smart people, right? Especially in the consumer tech world. When the focus changes to retention, it's not just somebody saying that, okay, now I need to do this because it's important. You're basically aligning or changing the thought process in your entire org, or at least your marketing.
You hear a lot of this right now, right? Because all these large companies are now suddenly shifting gears and saying we want to be profitable, we want to be EBITDA positive and operate at more sensible plays. And it's an entire org redesign because they've never thought about this subject for the last 5 years.
Absolutely. So it's not just one guy at the top thinking about this. It's an org redesign. Somebody has to.
Your everyday decision making is very different when you want to build for the long haul. Absolutely. And that's where the connection with, I hear profitability is a play a lot more. And you mentioned this term that the market size in India ultimately caps out, which means the only way you can actually get more is by retention. Right. But I'm just curious to understand in your assessment, in your conversation, do people seriously make the connection as straightforward and as easily, or they don't yet?
It actually varies.
There might be a spectrum, sure.
It varies a lot across different categories, right? Even within subcategories of edtech and fintech, you will have very different customer segments, and the market size varies a lot across these customer segments depending on which one you're looking at. So yes, it's a function of that too. But I'm reiterating the point. It's a great state for most of these companies that they've got into. There is good degree of focus on first party data, looking inwards as opposed to going outwards. And one of the things that we should talk about is the whole change in towards the cookieless world.
That next question, in fact,
is that
yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So I'll let you ask the question.
No, it's exact next, so you can go on with it.
Right. No, we're moving towards a world where you'll not have third party data tracking. Right?
Hopefully, when Google does finally decide to
decides to do it, which will happen, right? They're under extreme pressure
with time. Yeah.
So with time, it will happen. And you cannot rely on that third party accuracy of tracking. You can no longer say third party data tracking. People who are so and so age group in so and so regions with so many with these interests, all those things will go away. You cannot do it. And even if they provide you, the data is not going to be any of any use to you.
Now, sorry, you're saying that the native targeting of Facebook and Google will still remain, but all this cookie-based affair where the retargeting world happens is sort of go away.
So the way it works, Ankur, is today, if you use the Google Ad Exchange, Google will plant a cookie for you if you're a customer, right? If you're an advertiser, Google will plant a cookie on your own websites, on all third-party websites who have granted them permission to. And Google is able to track your users across these multiple properties. Correct, right? So if a user goes to your app or your website, and the user keeps going to other apps or the websites, Google will track this user, even anonymously so, as the same user.
Sure.
Now, this whole idea of interest, etc., right, demographic interest, etc., is a build up on what this user is doing. So if I'm going to these news websites or these book websites, I am interested in politics and fiction, right? It's a build up.
All that enrichment of data that's happening because of this multi-party data consolidated goes away.
It goes away because if I'm cookies, you can no longer do that. You can't track the same as one.
Sure.
So these will be all different users. Now, the first party intelligence is purely based on the data that you provide us.
This is going to go crazy on the acquisition side of things, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
By nature of it. And automatically, if you were to get the same customers back, you don't want to depend on the same channels as acquisition. That's likely it'll become more expensive.
It will. I'm pretty sure it will. And I'm pretty sure Google will start offering something else on top
of the mechanism. Sure.
So all that time will tell. But the point is, in light of all of these changes, the acceleration with which tools like us get adopted is going to massively improve.
So you're basically saying this is going to be your, Paytm's demonetization moment, right? Cookieless world kind of becomes.
I'm hoping for body,
right? Thank you so much, Avlesh, for doing this.
Pleasure.
Very educational. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ankur.